1603. The body of the Queen of England is placed in a lead coffin, and her tomb has not been opened since. Why? Out of respect? Or out of fear that inside lies a truth we are not ready to hear? They say there are tombs that speak louder than any words. Elizabeth I's sarcophagus is one of them. In Westminster Abbey, royal tombs are not opened. This is the rule, not the exception. But for some reason, the silence surrounding her has become particularly loud. Because the truth about Elizabeth could change not only history, but also our very understanding of power. She turned her own body into a state symbol, and even after her death, she continued to rule the empire. On March 24, 1603, Elizabeth Tudor, the last of a great dynasty, died. She was the woman who defeated Spain, subdued the church, and held the throne in a world where women were not even allowed to think for themselves. Her death marked the end of an era and the beginning of a legend. Richmond Palace, spring 1603. The air is thick, saturated with incense. Servants wash the floors with lavender water and burn incense, but the smell does not go away. The Queen sits motionless. She does not sleep, eat, or talk. For weeks, she refuses to go to bed. When doctors begged her to rest, she whispered, "If I lie down, I will never get up again." She understood that even the moment of her death would be watched by everyone. Elizabeth could not simply die. She knew that even the end of her life would become part of a story that everyone would judge. She kept her word. To understand why Elizabeth died sitting up, you have to know how she lived. Because her life was not about power, it was about survival. 1536. A 3-year-old girl stands at the window as a rumble rises in the courtyard. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, is being led to the scaffold. Later songs said that Elizabeth saw the sword fall. In fact, she did not. She only heard the silence after the blow. And perhaps then she understood the main thing. Weakness kills. Love too. Elizabeth's childhood was not a fairy tale, but a school of survival. She saw her father change wives, saw heads roll after dinner. She learned to be silent and observe. When she was called a bastard and stripped of her title, she bowed and thanked them. While inside, she counted who had betrayed her and who would survive. They say that even then she learned to look at a person and immediately see how quickly they could be lost. And this is no joke. It was an instinct that kept her alive in a world where tenderness killed. After the death of her sister Mary, she was thrown into the Tower. Dark corridors, scratches on the walls from the hands of those who died there. She was told that there was no evidence against her, but the verdict was already ready. She understood. You can only live if you learn to play the game. And she played brilliantly. Obedient, silent, pious. Catholic when necessary, Protestant when convenient. She was sick when they wanted to interrogate her and prayed when they were angry. This role saved her life, at the cost of part of her humanity. They say that when she was finally released, she left a scratch on the wall and wrote, "To survive is to learn to lie." No one knows if this is true, but this story has outlived everyone. The year is 1558. She is 25. The empire is in ruins. The treasury is empty. The first words of her advisors: "Your Majesty, you must marry." A woman on the throne without a husband is a threat to the state. A parade of suitors begins, from Philip II of Spain to Anjou. She neither chooses nor refuses. She keeps everyone in limbo and controls them with it. Imagine, everyone wants to control you, but you control their desires. Contemporaries wrote about her tall stature, low voice, and strong hands. Sometimes they hinted that her body was not like a woman's. Historians argue. Some suggest a natural condition that prevented her from giving birth. Others consider it an attempt to explain what was unacceptable for the era, that a woman could rule on her own. There were also rumors that ambassadors tried to find out about her womanly affairs. There are no documents, but the very fact of such rumors shows the pressure she lived under. There is also a later story about a doctor who examined the Queen and soon died. It is difficult to confirm this, but the legend has taken root. In a monarchy, even death could be part of politics. Her power lay in the myth she created herself. She did what her parents could not do and what no one else has been able to do since. She turned herself into an icon that could not be touched, but could be ruled. Sounds like fiction? Now imagine. This fiction held Britain for 4 decades. They say beauty is power. For Elizabeth, it became a weapon, and at the same time, a slow poison. Every morning, her maids performed a ritual that today would be called suicide. First, acid to cleanse the skin, then a white paste known as Venetian whitewash. The main ingredient was lead, sometimes arsenic. Poison on her face, day after day, year after year. She did this not for beauty, but to look strong and unchanging. In those days, a woman on the throne was expected to be flawless, even at the cost of her own health. In the candlelight, her skin glowed like marble. In portraits, she was a goddess in pearls and gold, eternally young, almost inhuman. But under the layer of paint were wounds. Maids whispered that removing the makeup was painful, and ulcers appeared under the whitewash. Perhaps this is an exaggeration, but the symptoms of lead poisoning coincide with what chroniclers described: insomnia, headaches, joint pain, trembling hands, and outbursts of anger. Every day she harmed herself to remain eternal. Beauty became her duty, and poison her policy. The queen's body paid for the image of the empire. Imagine, your portrait is not art. It is a document of power. No artist had the right to depict Elizabeth without her approval. Later, an official template even appeared, the Mask of Youth. Artists were ordered to copy the same face, eternally young, unchanging. Thus was born the idea of the eternal queen, who does not age or die. The empire demanded immortality, and it gave it, at the cost of itself. Underneath the luxurious dresses were other shackles. Corsets. In the Tudor era, it was not just a fashion, it was the armor of power. It was tightened so tightly that the waist was reduced by several inches. After receptions, she breathed shallowly, with her shoulders. Maids said that deep marks remained after the corset was removed. This is no exaggeration. It is a symbol of power that shapes even the body. Her face became a weapon, her body a political tool, and her heart a battlefield between humanity and image. But ahead of her lay a decision that made even her doubt her own cold-bloodedness. It was a moment when politics and personal life collided in the most painful way. 1587, Mary Stuart, Queen of Scots, her cousin, awaits her sentence. 19 years in captivity, and one blow of the axe. Elizabeth signs the execution order, and then insists that it was done without her consent. Perhaps it was a political lie, or perhaps it was remorse that she had no right to show. After the execution, she hardly left her chambers. Some said she was grieving. Others said she was afraid, because now the whole world had seen that even a queen could order the death of another queen. What would you do if your signature meant the death of a relative and the salvation of an empire? A lady-in-waiting wrote in her memoirs. She slept little, and when she did sleep, she whispered Mary's name. Perhaps it is fiction, but even if it is not, it is a different kind of truth. Elizabeth executed a mirror image of herself, a woman who allowed herself to be alive. 1588. The Spanish Armada, 130 ships, 30,000 soldiers. Elizabeth goes out to the army in Tilbury. A white horse, a silver cuirass over her dress, red feathers on her helmet, and a speech that is still quoted today. I know I have the body of a weak woman, but the heart and stomach of the King of England. She speaks before the army, and then faints. She does not get up for a week. Officially, it is exhaustion. Unofficially, it is pain, possibly the effects of lead poisoning or diseased organs. But the main thing is the image, a goddess on a white horse, a symbol of strength, holding the empire together. Power is theater, and she played until the very last line. That same year, Robert Dudley, her closest friend, dies. After his death, she locks herself in her chambers. When she comes out, she wears a small medallion around her neck. Inside is a letter signed by her, his last. It was found after the Queen's death. Some said there was a lock of hair inside. Others said the medallion was never opened. No one checked, and the legend lived on. After defeating the Armada, England celebrates. And she loses everything. Her friends die, her enemies grow old. And she remains, between image and reality. Her portraits become increasingly unreal. Her skin is white, without a trace of life. Her eyes are like those of an icon. Artists are forbidden to paint wrinkles. Even in old age, she must look eternal. And beneath it all, fatigue, pain, and loneliness. No minister dares to tell the truth. No servant dares to look her in the eye. The mirrors in her chambers begin to be covered. Have you noticed how often a legend destroys the one who created it? When a legend becomes too bright, the truth is the first to die. 7 decades of power, fame, and spectacle. And now, the stage is empty. No actors, no audience. Only silence and the smell of incense, which cannot hide the decay of time. Her teeth are ruined. Lead, sweets, years of pain. Breathing is torture. Eating is almost impossible. Her cheeks are stuffed with fabric so that her face does not appear sunken. On her head are heavy wigs, pinned with wire and pins. Because she has no hair left. Her hands trembled. Her eyes could barely see. And yet, not a word about weakness. A queen has no right to be mortal. The reports wrote cautiously. Her Majesty needs a lot of incense. Others were more direct. The air in the chambers is heavy, and incense does not help. Were these descriptions exaggerated? Perhaps, but they show how quickly the legend turned into a shadow of itself. Imagine, your fame is so great that even the smell around you becomes part of the myth. 1602, Elizabeth hardly speaks. She sits in an armchair, her eyes open, her gaze somewhere beyond the room. When the maids ask her to lie down, she replies, "The bed is a trap." She sleeps sitting up. She eats almost nothing, a little wine, a spoonful of broth. Her belly is swollen. Some say it is water in her stomach, others say it is a tumor. The world at that time seeks mystical explanations. God gave her a child before her death. Thus, a rumor is born that the queen is pregnant with the spirit of the empire. It was absurd, but symbolic. She was indeed carrying her state, and could not let it go. Her advisors begged her to name an heir. Without this, there would be civil war. Names were suggested: James of Scotland, Arabella Stuart, English lords. She remained silent. And then, they say, she simply nodded. That was enough for history to get a new king. James, the son of the very Mary Stuart whom she had once sent to her execution. An irony that needs no explanation. Imagine, you spend your whole life running from the shadow of one woman. And in the end, you hand her the throne through her son. Spring 1603. Night. Long shadows on the walls. Elizabeth finally falls, without strength, without sound. She is carried to bed for the first time in many weeks. She no longer speaks. She just looks up. The candles burn down. The maids stand silently. They are ordered not to touch her. When her breathing stops, no one cries out. Silence is her last command. Then there is only whispering. When they undressed the body, they said that the skin came off with the makeup. They wrote that the smell was heavy, and the body was quickly placed in a lead coffin. This was done with all monarchs to prevent decomposition, but legends grew up around her. The queen who was buried alive, they said later. It is impossible to confirm this, but the phrase stuck, because even Elizabeth's death became part of the show. The funeral was luxurious but hasty. The coffin was not opened, neither then nor later. She was buried in Westminster Abbey next to James, the son of her enemy. And for more than 4 centuries, the sarcophagus has remained closed. The official reason is respect for the memory of the monarchs. Indeed, royal tombs in Westminster are not opened for research. Despite this, the rumors continue. Some say they are afraid to find confirmation of the legends. Others say that it is not her who lies in the sarcophagus. There is no evidence. There is only silence. And sometimes silence speaks louder than any words. They say that the dead keep secrets better than the living. But perhaps it is not because they cannot speak, but because we are not ready to listen. Because the truth about Elizabeth Tudor is not a story about the monarchy. It is a story about us. About our love of myths and our fear of the truth. About how easily we create gods, and how painful it is to admit that they were human. We often do the same thing. We try to look strong when inside we are tired. This is probably what she did, until her last day. Lead makeup, lead coffin, lead silence. When scientists ask for permission to open her sarcophagus, the answer is always the same: no. Perhaps because inside is not a secret about her, but the truth about us.